Thank you for your patience, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful event sponsored by the Hayden Center at the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. I am Mark Rozelle, and I serve as the Dean of the Schar School. So I'm delighted to open up this program. And as is customary, I think we should recognize the Provost of our university, David Wu. David. And I want to express my gratitude to George Mason University for giving space to the Schar School, the Hayden Center, to sponsor and develop programs like this, which I think have just been wonderful for our school and for the university. As you can see, capacity, crowd, popular programs, we're still getting seats in here, so this is just great. The Hayden Center is one of the new created centers at the Schar School of Policy and Government. We have had 3 programs now this year under the theme of Truth Tellers in the Bunker. So this is the penultimate program for this season. And we will be coming back next year with some more programs. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of introducing Governor Terry McAuliffe joining the Schar School of Policy and Government. And last week, I had the honor of introducing Lech Walesa for a speaker program at the Schar School. And tonight, this. So the Schar School is really moving up, and people keep asking me what's going to happen next, and I say just wait a week. We've got another great program coming. So with that, I would like to introduce. Thank you. And did I tell you about our number 3 ranking by U.S. News and World Report? So. We're right behind some place called Harvard, and we're coming right after them next time. So. Anyway, with that, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of the Hayden Center, my colleague, Larry Pfeiffer. Larry?
Thank you. Okay, everybody. So, who's excited to be seeing and talking to the cast of and crew of Homeland? No. That was a Washington clap. Let's do a Hollywood clap. All right, that's better. All right, so my job is to drag this introduction welcome remarks as long as possible to get the anticipation really building. So give me a moment a moment of indulgence. So Mark mentioned Hayden Center. The Hayden Center has been around since October. Very excited to be part of it. Thankful for General Hayden for letting me be part of this. This is the 3rd in our series on this Truth Teller in the Bunkers series, where we're looking at evidence-based institutions under assault. This evening we'll be looking at it from a popular culture perspective. If you want a more exhaustive look at it, General Hayden's got a book coming out on May 1st called Assault on Intelligence. You can pre-order it on Amazon and be the first of your friends to read the book and comment on it, so please do that. Espionage and popular culture. Hopefully you've heard some songs that reminded you of some movies and TV shows. You've seen up here some goofy little pictures, and I don't know why there's an X up there. That shouldn't be an X, but okay, best laid plans. But espionage and popular culture, you know, when I grew up, I'm 56, 57 years old, so when I grew up, espionage and popular culture was James Bond, it was The Saint, it was Jean Le Carre novels, it was, you know, very, very mysterious, very romantic, dashing figures. Well, you look at me, I'm an Intel guy, 32 years, I'm no James Bond. So you know, but it was reflective of the society, it was reflective of what was happening in culture. You look more recently and you see things like Austin Powers, and you see things like Archer on the cartoon. So, you know, you know, it's kind of this bumbling, comical thing. You look at a show like Homeland, a show like 24, though, and you see, I think, an honest attempt to portray intelligence officers in a much more realistic fashion. Now, is it entirely real? Absolutely not. There are many things I watch. You know, my wife and I are both in the intelligence community. We watch the show and we're like, oh, no, that would never happen. Oh my God, we'd get shot if we did that. But there is a truth behind it all in terms of the dedication to mission and the sacrifice people make. So in that vein, I do want to recognize some folks from the Intel community first. We do have some special guests from the intelligence community, veterans of the Intel community I want to mention first. We have John McLaughlin, who is a former acting director of Central Intelligence. We have Michael Sulik, who was director of the National Clandestine Service. We have John McGaffin, who was Associate Deputy Director of Operations at CIA, but he's known more famously today as the Scoutmaster of the spy camp that's held every year for the cast and crew of Homeland. And I'd also like to recognize Mr. Bob Dietz, who's a professor at Schar School, obviously a popular professor at Schar School, but Bob has its roots in the law, and he was general counsel for General Hayden at NSA and a special counselor at CIA as well, so a good former friend and colleague. In addition to that, though, I would like also to recognize another group of people that are in the audience. There are people here tonight from something called Veterans in Media and Entertainment. So if there are any VME people in the room, if you'd stand up. These are people who are veterans of our armed forces, served in the wars, and they deserve a round of applause. And they're going to be bugging the heck out of these people for jobs at the end of the evening. But I would also like to recognize anybody else who served in the armed forces or is currently serving in the armed forces, and anybody else who served or is serving in the intel community, although you don't have to stand up because we don't want. With that, I would like to begin the introductions. So first and foremost, a man who needs little introduction. He's the namesake of our center, Michael V. Hayden, a gentleman who served 40 plus years in the United States military, culminating as a 4-star general officer, senior most ranking intel officer ever in the United States Air Force, served as director of NSA and served as director of CIA, and I had the great honor of working closely with him at CIA as well as at the Director of National Intelligence Office. So please welcome General Michael Hayden. Before I continue the introductions, I did want to mention one thing, again, to drag things out even longer. We will have an audience question and answer session shortly after General Hayden finishes asking his questions. We have a group of great Schar School students who will be manning microphones, and they will be running them around the audience. Wave them down if you'd like to ask a question. General Hayden will point at you. I would ask a couple of things. One, wait until you have the microphone to ask your question so we can hear you. Number two, if you're inclined to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. And then number three, actually ask a question. If you want to give a speech, record it and put it on YouTube later, and we'll watch it. Up here above, you hopefully have seen some hashtags and handles for Twitter. Would love it if you guys tweet during the event. Hashtag Homeland at Hayden. And then the handles are MV Hayden Center or Schar School, and then SHO_Homeland for Homeland as well. All right, continuing along, this next person I would like to introduce. This is somebody who, when I read her resume, it literally just knocked my socks off. This individual has been involved at the creative helm of just about every TV show any of you have ever loved watching out here. You go back to Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, you talk about Twin Peaks, Mad Men, ER, Pretty Little Liars, culminating at Walking Dead, and then of course now as director and executive producer at Homeland. In addition, she is a female director in Hollywood, which is a tough thing to do, and she has succeeded in doing that job. But she has taken time in her success to give back to others. So she is actively mentoring young women in the creative arts to help them be as successful as she is. And someday we can look at a time when we at least have as many female directors and producers as we do male directors and producers. So please welcome Lesli Linka Glatter.
Thank you so much. Hello.
All right, this next gentleman here, someday they will erect a statue to this guy somewhere in some intelligence community building. This gentleman has been responsible for portraying intelligence operations, intelligence agencies, intelligence operators in a way that I don't think anyone had ever done before. He does it with a lot of faithfulness to the actual tradecraft and the art that we do. But I think most importantly, he really looks at the humanity of what is done. I mean, the people in the intelligence community are just that. They are people. They coach soccer. They help out at church. They do everything that any of you do, and they make a lot of personal sacrifice. And I think if you look at his shows like 24 and particularly Homeland, you see that portrayed in many ways. So in addition to 24 and Homeland, was a major player in another great show, X-Files. So please welcome Howard Gordon. All right, this next gentleman is somebody else who almost needs no introduction. He has been just one of the people that God has bestowed just an incredible amount of talent upon. He is a master at the stage, a master at music. He's a master at acting. He has done movies. He has done television shows. Some of the best TV shows that have existed, he's been a part of. You look back at a television show like Chicago Hope, which probably predates most of the people in the audience, but a great medical drama that he served a key position in for a few years. Then you look at a show like Criminal Minds that is amazingly still trudging along on television, but he was a key instrumental player in the early days of Criminal Minds, the main actor there. I would like to believe that he finally found a genre, the spy thriller, that engaged him, and he has stuck around in a show for 7 years now, and portraying Saul Berenson. Just amazingly talented man, and I imagine someone in the audience here is going to want to ask him to say that famous line from Princess Bride. So don't hesitate to do that. I hear he loves to talk to you about Inigo Montoya. So please, a warm welcome for Mandy Patinkin. And last but not least, one of the most talented actors in the medium today. She has been in this business for a very long time, for a fairly young individual. Many people in the audience, now again, this is one where the age is appropriate. There are guys in this audience for whom Angela Chase was probably a great crush back in the day. There are some older folks here, men and women, who probably wanted to be a mother or father to that poor tortured teenage soul. She went on to do great work in Romeo and Juliet opposite Leonardo DiCaprio. Just phenomenal performance as Juliet. And her tour de force in the HBO presentation Temple Grandin, where she lived the life of an individual who suffered from Asperger's syndrome and yet still contributed in a great fashion to society. And then for the last 7 years has been portraying with incredibly great emotion, literally bearing her soul every night on episodes of Homeland. I'd like you to please give a great warm welcome to Claire Danes.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming. My task here is relatively light. I think I drop the puck and get off the ice. I'll try to kind of nudge the conversation along a few plot lines that we've mutually discussed, but I do think you're going to see an awful lot of energy and thought from the folks we've gathered here tonight who have kindly consented to become part of this. And just to review, this is the last step in the Hayden Center's program for this academic year. And we're trying to, what is the role of intelligence in a post-truth world? And tonight's focus is intelligence and popular culture. What lens does popular culture give to America's intelligence enterprise. All right. We'll have some clips. We'll invite some commentary. I think I won't have to ask many questions, but I'll start with at least one, and then we'll see how it goes. So, so Howard, I'm going to begin with a quote from Mandy. All right. And I'm going to ask your thought on it, and then right, maybe Leslie's. Homeland, at its heart, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, is a story about family at every level. The CIA family began with the Brody family, CIA family, the relationship between Saul and Carrie, the relationship between America and the world. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think when Alice and I started the show, we started with this character, and like all, who is she as a woman? Who is she as an American? Why is she who she is? And where does this? And it really was the axis. The axis of the show has always been, and was always to Alex and me, these two, this relationship. And Carrie was a woman of a certain age, and who had behind her perhaps an outsized responsibility for what happened on 9/11, and was mentored and tutored by someone who was one of the only people in the institution of the CIA who kind of recognized her gifts and its perils. And so that really was the axis of the show. And I guess to the extent that that's a family in a very postmodern kind of way, Mandy's statement is right-ish. I mean, it's not modern family. But it's about
relationship.
It's postmodern family.
But it's really about relationship.
It's always about relationship, and as all things are, about character. But again, how character plays out against. I mean, to quote someone who's Heraclitus, character is destiny, and that's something we think about carefully.
Leslie, I mentioned one of the families, CIA, and Larry's already mentioned spy camp, and coming here, and John McGaffin arranging folks like myself and many others to come talk. You want to relate a little bit? I mean, this has been going on for several years. How did it start? Why did you do it? What's changed because of it?
Well, that's a great question. Now I feel like this has become like the centerpiece of where the next season's story comes from. And when I started coming, was it done before I came on as an executive producer?
John McGaffin, who I think is here somewhere.
Right. Yeah. John's there.
John is in the front, was one of our writers, and who has since passed away. Henry Bermel's father was chief of station.
Right.
And a family member of John's, and made the introduction early on. And so that became a field trip that was ad hoc at first, and then kind of became institutionalized and has since become.
Because I came on and went to my first spy camp in season 3, and it was eye-opening. And one of the things that both Howard and Alex Ganza, the co-creators, always ask is, what keeps you up at night? So with that question, we end up not sleeping at all because it keeps all of us up at night. But with that information, the writers go into the room and come up with what the season is going to be. And for me as a director, the fact that every year we basically reinvent the wheel. We're never back in the same city. The story is different and grows, and is a huge, exciting challenge, but it never gets easier. But without that, I can't imagine. I can't imagine Homeland without the kind of advisors that have helped us understand what's going on.
I just want to tack one thing on, because one of the things that's sort of a subset of that too is family, is really the price of these characters pay.
Absolutely.
In terms of our conventional understanding of what family is, and that, and you see it in these characters. I mean, Saul has and Carrie have both paid such a tremendous amount of, such a steep price for their service and for their commitment and for their patriotism, whatever that means.
Right.
So it's really about this counterpoint between what, there was an unwritten scene about once where Carrie says to her sister, I do what the sister at one point blamed Carrie for not wanting to have the conventional trappings of a family, and Carrie goes back at her, well, you have a picket fence and a family because I do what I do. That was just sort of, there was an idea behind it. And so I think we were always and ever mindful, and it's the endless, a source for us is that the price that the people who serve the way they serve pay. on all of our behalf.
Claire, in the spy camp. I mean, so to begin, I mean, this is rooted in an Israeli drama, all right? A fairly narrowly defined prisoner of war who may have gone to the other side and so on. So you read the script first coming in, you get interested in that, and that launches you into this. But as this goes on, I suspect you take on more the identity of the character. And so what did you absorb about the people who do what you do on stage, so to speak, in real life in terms of relating Carrie to these other folks?
Yeah. Well, I think when I first was starting to make sense of the story and assemble this Carrie Matheson person, I had a lot of help with somebody within the institution who very graciously and generously showed me her world and kind of assembled a kind of an assortment of people who she thought might help give me some insight. And it was just amazing to have the curtain pulled, you know. And I just couldn't believe that this parallel universe really existed, you know. I was just overwhelmed by that experience. And, you know, to really reinforce what Howard was just saying, I was really struck by the sincerity of their patriotism and the level of their devotion. And I was very humbled by that. I was very moved by that. I don't think I had really encountered that so directly before. And that has always stayed with me, you know, to really appreciate how real that is. And that can be confused and that can be maligned, and we explore, you know, that. but that earnestness and that true interest in really keeping our country, you know, safe and keeping its identity intact was very powerful. So I do come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Mandy, you may not remember, but the first time we met was down the street here at one of the galleries. It was for the Washington premiere of the first episode of, I think, season 2. And I got invited because of my former status. And I walked up to you at the after-event party and said, "Hi, I'm Mike Hayden. I used to play the director of CIA too." What have you picked up, again, in exposure to all these folks in the intelligence community to create Saul as he exists today?
That if they make a mistake, they chance losing everything. And their care and patriotism that I've experienced with every individual I've met within the intelligence community, it moved me.
You've been out to the agency, right? I mean, you've had a chance to visit at Langley?
Oh yeah, we're there, and they wanted to impress upon me how sometimes they would lose an officer in the field and what it would cost them, and I'm not even. Forgive me. I just don't know how to answer the question well because I've just had so much input from so many different extraordinary people, from people in the intelligence community when we come here once a year, to Pulitzer Prize winning writers, all different individuals who care about this country. And when we sit down, and I'm not asking, I mean, I read the book by, I can't remember the writer's name that was considered the Bible
David Ignatius?
Legacy of Ashes. I read that book before we did the first one. You probably hate it.
Yes, I do.
You can write your own books now. So
I often do.
Okay, good. But I was just I got lost with the question.
What did you absorb from the directors you've met, from the folks you've met? How has that shaped the Saul you want to be on you were
I know.
on screen
Thanks.
last night?
Thanks. So this is why I need writers, folks. But I wasn't interested in the little details, like can you use a cell phone in the CIA? No, you can't, or it's got to be a BlackBerry with a certain kind of gold thing because then they can't trade. Good, fine. Let the prop people figure that out and the production people, and they do a brilliant job. That wasn't what interested me. I was looking for the heartbeat of these individuals, who they were as human beings. I wanted to know how they prayed. I wanted to know how they dealt with terror in their own lives, when they lost someone, when they were afraid, when they were sitting in the Oval Office with a crisis. Who do they talk to when they're frightened? What do they do with fear? I was looking for their human nature, and I have discovered it on a number of occasions. And one that I shared earlier, may I share that now? We were talking earlier with some people. It was a huge moment for me. We'd already had one spy camp, and then the second one I think I missed because I went to Cambodia with American Jewish World Service. Forgive me those who just heard this. So I was a little late, but it was good that I was late because the writers had already gotten in gear and knew what they were doing, so I was a little more focused in what I was going to ask. And two individuals came into the room of a very high nature within the intelligence community. I'd met them before, had dinner with them, had dinner with their wives before. And this was the day, I think in July of 2016, when Comey came out and made the announcement about Hillary's emails. And then went on a little further to make it even worse. Even though he let her off, said she didn't do anything, then made it even worse for Hillary. And at that moment, these two individuals, we just said hello, we were just about to begin, and their buzzers went off. They got this information, and these are two guys who spent a good deal of their life in the Oval Office, and I saw steam come out of their ears. I saw their temperatures go up, their faces got red, and they were in a state. They couldn't talk to me. They really had to calm down for a minute. And I instantly assumed, I didn't ask, nor have I ever asked, but I made the assumption immediately that they had compatriots, friends, people who worked with them, that had lost their jobs and their livelihoods for far less. And there was a double standard in that moment, and that they were insane over what just happened. And they really had to calm down and get themselves together. The reason that was important to me is the previous year, I was with both these two people, and we were asking the terrifying questions we ask when we sit down. What are you most afraid of? What are you most concerned about? And that year, so that next year, in January or February, whenever we came for spy camp, it was right after the inauguration of this new administration, and we were asking questions like, are you as concerned about Kim Jong-un and North Korea's situation as the Cuban Missile Crisis? And one of these gentlemen said, I'm more concerned. And what else are you concerned with? Putin, what's the Putin situation with the election and all that? I'm very concerned. And all of these concerns. But the way they answered each concern, as we would ask this monumental smorgasbord of horror that was in front of all of us and remains to be in front of us every day, they were calm. They were cool and very reassuring. And it showed me I could relax and I could be calm and I could take it easy and I could take it home to my wife and say, these guys, I watched their nature. That's my job. They weren't crazy. They weren't terrified. They were calm and believed in the institutions of our country and that they would carry forward and move things in the proper direction. About 6 to 8 months later, I think, it was about October, we were shooting now in Richmond, Virginia. One of these gentlemen came to visit the set, and I reminded him of that moment when the buzzers went off, and that my interest in their nature and that I could see their temperature rise. And then I talked to them, and then I reminded him of a year later, after the inauguration of this administration, how they responded in a very calm, cool, collected way, the way you want the people in this office, in those offices to respond and around the world. And I said, so what do you think now, 8 months after the inauguration and all of these tweets had been changing our lives globally? And this one gentleman, who's one of my guides and teachers in this world, said, I've spent my life, a great deal of my adult life, in that Oval Office for many, many years, briefing different presidents of this country. I know the difference between a candidate and a president and what happens once they enter into that space, how it changes a human being, the weight of that office. And I was certain back in February that that would take place, and it hasn't. And now I'm terrified.
Thank you. So you folks have been very generous sending some clips forward to us, all right? So I want to run the first one in about 10 seconds, so get ready. Intelligence is a lot of things, but it actually tries to be right. It actually tries to analyze a situation in order to report objective truth. You have a scene this year in which Saul and Carrie's view of what's going on conflict, and that has to be resolved. So can we play that clip number 1, please?
Hey.
Hey.
Sorry, I didn't know what else to do.
You okay?
Not really. I'm in a corner, Saul. A bad corner. You want to walk a little? Cold.
Sure.
About a month ago, I ran into an old bureau friend. We had a couple drinks, got to talking. Turns out we shared a similar view about what was going on in the country.
Not a fan of the president?
Nope. Plus, he had a line on evidence which indicated she was knowingly abusing her power.
Like what?
Certain memos of DOJ. He was part of the team interviewing everyone detained in the second wave of arrests. I opened a secret channel with Senator Paley.
Strange bedfellows, you and Paley.
Got everybody released, didn't we?
You certainly helped.
Anyway, I thought that was the end of it. But then General McClendon dropped dead in prison. That's when things started getting really weird.
How so?
Well, we found out David Wellington's girlfriend was in Hazleton, West Virginia, with $50,000 the day before McClendon died.
Carrie, come on.
You don't believe me? She just agreed to appear in front of Paley's committee.
What do you mean, just agree?
Less than an hour ago, in a proffer session with her lawyer, she's going to testify against Wellington in exchange for immunity.
You realize if even a shred of this is true?
It's not true, Saul. That's what I'm trying to tell you, but she's going to swear to it anyway.
Why?
I don't know. I only know she's lying.
About the money or about Wellington?
Both, I'd say, but definitely about Wellington. He is innocent. That is confirmed.
How can you be so sure?
Because I've been watching him for the past week, Saul. I'm up in his home. The guy had nothing to do with it, believe me.
Back up a second. You've got surveillance on David Wellington? On whose authority?
Saul, please, can you just go with me for a
Go with
minute?
you? No, I can't just go with you. You understand the position this puts me in?
Yes, I do. In a position to save the president and possibly the republic.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I'm serious, Saul. At least help me figure this out before you sell me down the river. You may not like my methods, but if it wasn't Wellington, then somebody else took a hit out on General McClendon. The question is, who? Well?
Well, I think you just answered your own question.
How?
If you're right. Whoever's bankrolling this woman also wants McClendon's murder pinned on the White House.
So she was supposed to get caught? I mean, Is that what you're saying? She was supposed to testify in front of the committee?
Is it so far-fetched? Weren't you and your FBI friend interested in just this outcome? What's his name again?
Dante Allen.
Tell me. How'd you find out she was in West Virginia in the first place?
She got a parking ticket there.
No, I mean, who brought it to your attention?
He did. Dante did.
You say you're old friends, the two of you just bumped into each other by chance. When was this?
Right after I got fired, Becky.
Interesting coincidence.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Fuck me. Fuck me.
Take a breath, Carrie.
A breath? Are you kidding? Jesus Christ.
It's just a theory at the moment.
No, the truth is ringing in my fucking ears.
Listen.
Jesus Christ.
I know how this goes. I'm CEO of that club. You have to calm down now, pretend we never had this conversation.
What I need to do is nail that fucker.
Carrie, lay low, go out of town for a few days. I don't care. Just don't communicate with him under any circumstances.
Why the hell not?
Because I'm on to another situation. I don't want you alerting anybody.
What situation?
Can't say. A Russian intelligence operation involving active measures against the President of the United States.
Wait. Wait, you think Dante might be a part of that? You think I might be a part of that?
I think you need to keep your head down until you hear from me. Okay?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So, for you, powerful scene, back to the relationship between Saul and Carrie. Necessary plot turn, you've got to keep the thing going. For people like me, though, it's an echo. Because, I mean, we freely admit we were slow on the uptake within American intelligence with regard to what the Russians were doing. We didn't do badly, but we were behind the sine wave. And then convincing our political masters about that was another sine wave further on, and it cost us. I just ask any and all of you to comment on any aspect of that scene, including the one I just surfaced. Because then the next clip, I'm going to play the two Russians arguing with one another. All right, yeah. So let me ask you to comment here.
I mean, one of the things, just in terms of talking about the heart of the story is about a relationship, this is the first time Saul and Carrie see each other in this season. And the fact that they fall right back into the relationship that they have, which is so profound, and that they're immediately back there together as collaborators, as in some way father, daughter, mentor, and the fact that you have these two incredibly smart people, who have seen the world differently, as we all did in this crazy time we're living in, and they can put it together and analyze this.
Well, I was just talking about, my North Star in organizing this character is her devotion to her country. So this idea that she was, used as a way to undermine it and injure it is the ultimate fear. I mean, there could not be a worse fate, or reality. So it's, and of course Saul understands what that's going to mean to her, and is trying to protect her from that. And he appreciates how fragile she is and how profound a blow this would be. and and he also knows intimately what that is like, because he's just that much more veteran and senior and experienced, and
And it
has
just
been,
happened to him.
and it just happened to him.
Right.
So that's good. That's good chum, right? That's good material for some drama. But but that was a difficult scene, because there was a lot of exposition that was necessary and very elegantly written. You can't begrudge that, but that's a lot of technical work that is not. It's totally essential and not that much fun, and it's vital for us to get to that reward at the end, where there's that truth that's revealed, and that relationship that is exposed. But yeah, it's a workout, But of course, I have like the best partner in the universe here. But
I have the best.
Yeah. No, but it's true, and it's real. I mean, we have these storylines that take us in separate directions, and and then finally, in the middle of the season, we get to meet again as actors and characters, and it's such a relief. And I'm always, it's so. I find it very moving that they can share their deepest selves with each other, and that it's actually safe.
And this was a turning point scene in the season,
Yeah.
too.
And
It
I
set
think
up everything
Carrie
else.
was probably, critical of Saul and a little judgmental.
Because he had gone to work?
Because he
Totally.
had, and here she is, falling prey to that same vulnerability, and so that deepens their relationship, and she has to develop another level of understanding, and and compassion, and so that's credit to our writers.
In some ways, he also solved it's like an inversion of what season 1 was, where Carrie had this minority opinion. And was the flag bearer for this impossible theory. And Saul, if you'd seen the episode, he's in a meeting with the president, and even suggests in the open meeting that the misinformation at the Lucasville massacre could be the Russians or from the Russian playbook, and he's kind of dismissed. So this is just at the incipient part of that theory that becomes the cornerstone of the rest of the season.
Right.
Michael, you and I were talking before we came in this whole banner that this gathering is under is post-truth world. And one of the things you had said to me is, will our institutions that have taken care of our country from its inception remain? Will they survive what's being done to them right now? I hadn't seen that scene. I just played it. And it's so interesting what it did to me watching it, as I'm sure you live this every day of your past life and even of your current life in memory. I was talking to Claire before we walked out that, wow, now we finished filming on March 28th, and, a certain kind of re-entry period and just recuperation, and I don't even realize the intensity of the experience for 6.5, 7 months until we're finished, and I'm able to attend to the most mundane, stupid little kind of house cleaning thing that I can't get over. I don't have the energy or focus to attend to. And when I'm watching that, I'm immediately, damn you, because it brought me right back to it. And I'm immediately reminded of what I live in with this piece, that she embodies the future, not of my life, but of my country. And I must protect her. So there's something in the scene, just as there's something in my life. Because sometimes, like all of us, we listen to the news every day. We're living with what's going on globally, not just in our country. It seems to be epidemic. It's contagious. It's going on far too many places on the planet. And, you don't want to tune in. You want to throw your phone off the roof. You want to just stop, and it's enough, and take a break. And so sometimes I can't take any more of the mirroring, as Shakespeare says. Our job is to mirror nature. I can't take it anymore. Not only do we mirror nature, but these guys then sit and brilliantly write a mirror of it with hopefully some artistic intensity or morality risk that's even heightened to a greater degree. And sometimes to make it live, because I'm so sick of what's going on in the world we're living in, I marry it to something I can connect in that is maybe also part of the real world globally, but that I can digest a little better because I'm overwhelmed with what's happening in reality on Twitter and at home. And so I think of something else that I care about in the world, and I keep those thinkings, those thoughts. That's my private business as an actor, what I connect to be alive, to make my life meaningful. And I keep it private, just as I was keeping something private from Carrie in that scene. The part that I didn't want her to know, but she's my kid, and a kid knows how to make you tell her everything.
That was my impression. At that moment, you went against your narrowly defined professional judgment, and you threw her a personal lifeline and said it was the Russians.
Yes.
Right.
And I was not going to do that.
Well, speaking of the Russians, roll clip number 2.
Where? I gotta watch another one?
You're not in this one.
Oh, thank God.
Спасибо, любовь моя. Вы говорите, американцы знают, что я здесь?
Да.
Откуда такая уверенность?
Меня навестил Соль Бернсон, советник по национальной безопасности.
Я знаю, кто он.
Вы были крайне неосторожны. Использовали свои старые трюки. Он, конечно, заметил.
О чем это вы?
Люкасвиль. Вы сами у себя позаимствовали сфабрикованную историю о мертвом мальчике.
Хорошо.
Плохо. В результате этой операции погибли американцы на территории США. Мы так не работаем.
С каких-то пор?
А мы так никогда не работали. И кто покатит вверх камень, к тому он воротится.
Ну, меня это мало беспокоит.
А зря. Американская президентша сейчас как раненый зверь. Если она узнает, что мы за этим стоим, ответный удар может быть очень неприятен. В Сирии, на Украине.
Как я вам уже сказал, меня это абсолютно не беспокоит. Но спасибо, что предупредили.
Куда?
Я ухожу.
А я, милый, еще не закончил. Ты что-то меня не понимаешь. Тебе надо валить отсюда.
А то?
А то позвоню Стаковскому в посольство.
Стаховскому.
Ага.
Посольство. Вы серьезно? Я не работаю на Стаховского. Я докладываю напрямую. В Москву.
Без проблем. Тогда доложу в Москву о твоей недальновидности.
Мы с вами мало знакомы, дружище. Но вы застряли в прошлом. Старые правила уже давно не подходят.
Вот эти старые правила, дружище, удержали нас от самоуничтожения.
Я это уже слышал. Проблема в том, что я этому не верю. А единственное, что было уничтожено, это мы.
Не поддавайся своей собственной пропаганде, а? Виноватых везде хватало.
Расскажите это моей семье, которая потеряла все. Расскажите это моему брату, который умер от туберкулеза в Ельцинской больнице в 98-м.
Это было 20 лет назад. Другая Россия.
Ваша Россия. А это моя.
To my mind, a great scene by, and my compliments, playing it out entirely in Russian with two very powerful, obviously bilingual, at least bilingual actors. My personal, Kostaronin, Yevgeny in this, a more sympathetic Russian officer in another series that's out there. Vasha Russia, your Russia, not mine. And you come back to this in the next episode. And so talk, please, any and all, talk to me as to why you're spending some time describing the complexity. I mean, it would have been an easy matter simply to paint the Russians as the force to which we must be opposed, and I don't need to go further into it, but you don't. So, Mandy, you and I saw the other actor. I watched you all morning filming that scene along the James River, where you're trying to get information from him because he's a defector. So you're injecting a complexity in here that the simple plot would not need. So,
Well, the complexity is showing a complete life of these people, not just the enemy. I said to Alex Gonza, our co-creator, on the day we had a drink before we shot the first shot of the pilot, and I said, only in a drama do you have the power to show all sides. And the more we can do that, the more successful we'll be. We certainly did it in the first seasons with the opposing side and showing their complexity. And what I loved here was seeing this young man's love of his country and what it meant to him, and the time that our writers and editors take with presenting that.
Claire, last night in the episode, you two make eye contact in the stairs outside the negotiations. There seemed to be a lot of communication going on. Is that like versus like versus unlike? What?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny. That's a kind of parallel scene to the one that we just saw. It's you know, the old and the new. You know, here it's more contentious. You know, Saul and Carrie have a more collaborative spirit, but there's still some conflict there and a lot of negotiating, and I think that's really interesting to see, you know, what lies on that continuum. And so I think the Yevgeny character and Carrie are probably, you know, have equal value and weight in their respective, you know, worlds, and they both are right. And that's something that our show, and Mandy was saying that just now, I mean, I think is pretty good about, is honoring every side and giving each, you know, each argument real consideration and depth, and you know, and it makes it that much more engaging, and it makes it that much more kind of challenging for the audience to try to wrestle with in their living rooms, you know.
And I love the fact in these kind of scenes where, like, to me, this is a great Homeland scene in the sense that both characters have very opposing views of the world, but who's to say which one is right? They have their views, you know. So hopefully it makes the audience and all of us question what those are.
Well, it also gives us context too.
And
for
it
the
gives
things
us
where,
context.
you know,
Exactly.
we as a public are hearing Russian interference, and we're hearing it
Right.
in very sort of in fragments and in bits, delivered over the course of months and in different contexts. And here is a bit of a history lesson, frankly, and Yevgeny represents that transition from the nose-bloodied old Russia that Mandy, frankly, was a Cold Warrior. Saul is a Cold Warrior on the other side. He's really, he and Mark Evanier's character are on that side, and Yevgeny and Carrie are, in some ways, Mandy and Mark Evanier's characters lack the imagination, as you'll see in the finale. It really is, though Mandy has Mandy's character develops the base of a theory, it is Carrie's character who comes up with that very impossible and challenging answer. How do you answer this? And I think we're seeing it institutionally too now, as I imagine as policymakers and as people in the work you do. How do you answer it? What do you do? What's the court and what's the proper response in this impossible playing field? And we found ourselves as writers challenged on the other side, like, what do we do?
Well,
what would you do?
You give Yevgeny an awful lot of space in the next episode to lay out all the sins he claims have been committed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's something just on a production level, just a funny thing. Now, I did not direct this episode. It was directed by a wonderful director named Michael Offer. And he had a huge challenge because Costa is 6'6". And Mark, I don't know, how tall is Mark?
5'8".
5'8"?
This is Yvonne, is my
I think you're being generous.
Yes. This is just my reality. So when you're dealing with how do you shoot someone who is 6'6" and 5'8", and Michael very smartly put the camera on the ground. So you see a lot of
He
ceiling.
was also sitting down.
And he sat him down,
Right.
and then when he stood up, if you noticed, he went to the background, and Mark was in the foreground. So you don't think about it. Now, I don't, I think the staging.
But it's kind of wonderful because in the end, when you see
Yes.
Yevgeny, really kind of challenge him.
Exactly.
He's towering over
And
him,
I think that was great
Yeah,
blocking.
right,
I mean,
right.
the blocking of the scene added to the writing and the acting
Right.
and all of that.
Right.
And he winds
So
up, of
that's
course,
just
in a body bag looking down at him.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's also a cumulative effect of us coming to Washington every year and having the privilege to talk to all the people that come in and share their thoughts with us, both from intelligence community writers, et cetera. And I remember the people that come talk to us, I think this was the same year that we had like 8 of us talking to Snowden on a privately. What job am I doing? And don't tell anybody. We can't tell anybody about this bullshit. What do you mean, don't tell anybody? I'm in Washington. I told everybody immediately. So no, that wasn't true. I waited a few days. But what I do remember I'm pretty sure it was at that same time, was David Shedd came in to talk to us. Yeah. And David, at one of the questions that we asked, and this was like several years ago. This was like one of the first times, it might have been the first time I met David 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the questions was, what are you most concerned about? And David gave the most professorial response about Putin's messianic nature, about his age, about him wanting to make Russia the way it was, about him not needing to have gone into the Ukraine at all. He just did it, because he could. And his concern was of this man's nature. And that laid with our writers. And it came out a lot this year, I thought. I thought it was interesting how that 2 or 3 year ago conversation just percolated. And certainly with what's going on in the world and everything, but it's a cumulative game. We gather intelligence too, and our process is one that you need to go and sleep on.
And in our world, as in yours, sometimes later learned information illuminates that which you had, but which you did not appreciate.
That's right.
Yes, totally.
So I've got another clip that I will call the educational moment, kind of the schoolhouse rock of Russian disinformation, where you have got to expose what the Russians are doing. So you've got a character you've created, Clint, all right, and a DARPA computer whiz, and he's explaining to you how the Russians do what they do with regard to social media. But you've got to set that up because you can't assume that everyone in your audience understands that. So run that clip, please.
Got Chinese.
Remember this day, the National Security Advisor just brought you dinner.
Hey, look, those names I sent over, Dante Allen, Simone Martin.
Yeah, you should have a look at this. I mean, it helps that this guy Wellington is like a walking meme.
When was this taken?
About an hour ago.
How does it get from Tapas Bar Spat to National Network News in an hour?
Well, that's the end of the journey, the species jump. Really, we should start here.
What's that?
Well, that's a node, an identity.
What's it do?
Well, that's the tweet with the frame grab and the caption. I mean, that's the meme. All right, so these are the nodes that respond. They're actually mostly automated accounts. They light up red when they retweet messages, which they do sporadically over time so that it looks natural.
What about the green ones?
Yeah, no, those are real people. Those are verified accounts. So, like a real person might send a meme to a friend or 2 or 10 or maybe everyone they know. In epidemiology, that's called a replication rate, and every meme has one.
So that's the real people passing it on.
Mm-hmm. Each green node represents 1,000 people. Okay. So that's what it looks like on a national scale.
You seen this?
Yep.
Okay, now look here. That's what happened at Lucasville. I had to fiddle with the time a little bit to make things obvious.
Way more green note.
Twice as many. I mean, it's a bigger story. It's a better meme. But it's the red nodes that really caught my eye. The automated accounts. So far, yeah, I've identified over 75 of them now, also retweeting remarks about the president's chief of staff.
Same accounts for both stories. Is that unusual?
Well, no, not if the memes are being pushed by the same network.
I mean, Yevgeny.
Yeah. I mean, if he was behind Lucasville, I'd say he's got a hand in this one, too.
Is on your own?
Heads up from Langley. Apparently someone's been trying to reach me on Zipline.
Zipline? What is that? Is that like that's a spy thing?
For compromised agents to send out a distress call.
Not anymore. Shut it down after Allison Carr defected.
Well, that's odd then. Who could it be?
No idea. Used an old work name, no record of it. Says it's urgent. Wants a meeting tonight. Remember anybody calling himself John Bishop?
That's how he signed off?
Yeah.
It's Yvonne, Saul.
Vaughn's hiking on the Tetons. Was just on the phone this morning with the FBI field office.
They're mistaken. Bishop was Yvonne's word code in Berlin with the counterintelligence boys anyway.
Why Bishop?
Because of the Orthodox cross he always wore around his neck.
I love that because of the cross, because of the religious implications at the end, because every intelligence officer I spoke to talks about their upbringing and their ethical, moral nature and how they were brought up and the war that they fight within themselves to have to deal with certain kinds of decisions to protect their country that go against their own ethical, moral nature. And to bring that element in at the end of the scene, I think is extraordinary by our writers. And it also reminds me, my wife and I the night before last, watched, I think her name is Rebecca Miller, Arthur Miller's daughter. Isn't it Rebecca, honey? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I responded.
I don't go anywhere without her.
Yeah.
Arthur Miller spoke so beautifully about the theater at a certain time when he believed in it, when he thought that it was at its pinnacle, because he thought that its job was to create an atmosphere, not for what he necessarily wrote, but for in between the moments of what the words were spoken that he wrote for his characters, to ignite the listener into thinking about the current event that he wanted to reflect upon. And I think now, thank God, we have many people that do that, but particularly in television, by our gifted writers and our show and so many others that are creating what I guess is water cooler conversations. That it's that space in between the stuff about the green dots or the red dots. When you see a character looking to try to understand as we're trying to understand. And I think, I said to Catherine last night, what's the value of our show? What does it do? What's its worth? I can get it if you're saying, I Love Lucy or Honeymooners or make people laugh. That's an important medicine to the human condition. So what's the nature and value of our show? And I have begged the writers, and I think to make them listen, and I've often said when I had to do press in the first few years, people would say things to me like, I don't watch television, I don't watch that, but I like your show. Oh, why? I'd say, why? And one famous reporter said to me, because of its ambiguity. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a great answer of that possibility for everything. And I've pleaded with our writers, and they're wonderful the way I'm able to communicate with Alex and Howard and Chip and other guys. And I said, we are not reality television. We are not a Polaroid. We are not a news show. We're an art form. We're fiction. And we owe it to our audience to say something poetic about the human condition at the end of the day. I had this little girl, our cousin that we went, she's 2 or 3 years old, and she said to her, we're talking to her yesterday, she said, Mama, 2 or 3-year-old girl, a story has to have a problem, a solution, and a moral. I said, can I write that down? and I have pleaded with our writers, and they give us an extraordinary moral, in my humble opinion, at the end of the final chapter of our novel of this 7th season that will come on the final episode. And I was so grateful for it. And I was so grateful for their ability to listen. I won't say who because it'll give away, some aspect of what's coming. But there was a conversation that one of the actors had with one of the writers to even improve the first pass of what was conveyed in the nature of the final offering of our little novel this year. And that's a privilege. If you have a world platform to entertain, fine. But if you can also say something that offers hope and optimism to this broken, fragile human community that is desperately looking for guidance and a lifeline, give it.
Leslie, Claire?
Just to riff on what Mandy said about his journalist friend's characterization of the show, as the truth and ambiguity seem like they're almost opposite terms, but I would say the ability to have the idiom and the vernacular for ambiguity, and even just to create a context in which you can be ambiguous in a world in which we are seeing such tremendous the balkanization of opinion and of news and of frankly civil discourse. So if the show at least creates a context in which people can be ambiguous and find the language for ambiguity, I would just tag on to what you're saying, that's kind of what the pleasure and the privilege of doing this kind of show does, because it helps us process the same questions and the same things that all of us, I think, as citizens are living with, and Americans.
And I think that kind of a scene where there is so much material to try to explain, it's a very challenging scene. And I think it's a very effective one. And it made me, even though we've sat through having this explained to us, what went on.
Three different times.
Yes.
We are all spatially challenged, like Leslie and I, to the time we walked out here said, are you on the right side or the left side? We are not, that's why we became writers and artists, not
And when you
engineers.
said Clint, did you mean your character or who was explaining it to you?
Clint, our,
Yes.
our part of spy camp.
Right.
And that was one that left us
And
breathless.
I was curious as to whether or not you named Clint.
Yes.
Clint.
Well, do you
We're
realize
talking
in the
about
first
Clint Watts,
draft,
who's been
his
very
name was Clint
prolific.
Watts? And I'm like, guys, we can't call him that.
But Carrie was Claire Danes.
I know. But I think that, to me, and also dealing with the graphic, how do you, that
It's such
graphic
it's a
went-
complicated idea, and
Yes.
it got distilled. We just said, he explained it once, and then we said, okay, one more time.
Yes.
Now, for dummies, and then we said dumber, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And we kind of finally got it.
Yeah.
I never got it, by the way.
Yeah. No, you just said something, it's a non sequitur. Can I just say a non sequitur, even though it may not be to this, because it just came to me, and if I don't say it, I'll forget about it. So, I was recently with a very famous, very, very smart friend of mine. And I said to him, you know, some of us have the opportunity to be in front of a microphone or have a platform and talk to one person or many people on occasion. What do we say? And he said, don't oversimplify. And it's so interesting because in my life, it was always to make it simpler, 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 simpler. When I've worked with Steve Sondheim and I see his scribblings on papers on the piano, looking for the rhyme, it would be, you know, paring it down to just that one word. In acting, you're looking for that one word. The old expression, kiss it. You know, keep it simple, stupid. And yet, at this moment, this very wise person said, don't oversimplify. It is very complex and very complicated. And it deserves, also as Arthur Miller said, attention being paid. He said attention must be paid. But I just think it's so complex, and people sometimes say to me, I can't follow your show sometimes. And then I think, good.
So, I said I was going to drop the puck, get off the ice, and let you skate. My only task was to get to the bottom of the page, and I'm going to fail. All right? So, I know we're going to have questions, but I do want to play one more clip because it really had a great deal of meaning for me and some other folks from the agency who have kind of shared notes. So I'll ask you guys to kind of tee it up, skip the next one, and go to the next one in order. It's the one from the show last night in which I think it was maybe a line in the dialogue, but certainly I recall all in the conversation you two had on the balcony of the hotel. And while they're setting that up, Claire, can I tell a story about Carrie?
Sure.
About Carrie,
Yes.
not Claire. I gave a talk at, it was with Jeff Bezos offsite campfire thing, and they brought the spy guy in, kind of a curiosity, and they interviewed me. And we got to the Q&A, all right? And the question I got, it was probably at the end of season 2. The question I got was, do you watch Homeland? And I said, oh, God, I love Homeland. I love Homeland.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, by the way, Carrie worked for me.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And I said, all right, without the bipolar thing and the sex and the drugs, but Carrie worked for me. And I got all done, and I walked off stage, and George Tenet was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And George came up, and he put his arm around me and put his mouth next to my ear and said her name. Mm-hmm. He knew exactly who I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And so you have captured something that I want to show a little bit with this last clip, make a comment, and then invite your comments, and then get ready for your questions.
Sorry if I woke you.
Really think I've been sleeping. So,
You said you wanted a plan.
what I said was we're going home.
Well, I've got one. Want to hear it? You were in that room just like I was. There are divisions on their side we can use against them.
That's it?
No. Yevgeny's like this with Simone. He'll be even more protective of her after what happened today. His boss, Mirov, he doesn't care about her personally, but he needs to protect her too. The last thing he wants is her back in the U.S. blabbing about how they all brought down a president. Yakushin, though, has resentments the size of fucking Siberia about what those two have been doing over at the GRU.
That doesn't mean he'll help us.
No, but it means he won't mind helping us given the proper incentive.
Which is what?
Yakushin's got nearly 300 million in U.S. banks funneled through corporations he controls. We drain those accounts. He asks what he has to do to get his money back. We tell him, get us Simone.
You think he'll deliver Simone?
I don't need him to. All he has to do is find her. I'll do the rest.
You will.
With Anson and Bennett.
Okay, suppose you're right and Yakushin finds her. Suppose by some miracle he'd managed to get to her, wherever she may be. What then? What's the exfil plan?
It's the same as before.
No, it's not the same. It can't be. Exfil plan was built on a narrow window of surprise. It's gone. So tell me, with everyone watching, how do we get Simone and you back to the U.S.?
That's not the mission. The mission is to retrieve Simone.
Carrie.
Which I swear to God is still possible. And I've not come all this way in that fucking plane and in my life to fail in that mission when I know I can succeed. You've given me a hard time the past few years. I'm in, I'm out, I'm all over the place. I am not all over the place now. I'm here. And I'm all in. And I need you to say yes.
So, you guys are pretty popular at the agency. People talk about you a lot. They kind of reflect. And it's because I think you go out of your way to do reverence about difficult issues, about which honest people can and often do disagree. But that line in there, the mission is. Everyone who's worked at Langley just said, yeah. So thank you for that. By the way, Saul, I'd have never approved that mission. Okay, we've got some time for questions. We've got some mic runners, so mic runners, raise your hand, make sure you're identified, and let's get the first question out of the gate. And then we do have one final thing we want to do. Howard, you're going to run something at the end here, right? The video?
Yes.
Okay.
General Hay, I think we have a question here. Congratulations, Claire.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. He's been kicking this whole time. Yeah.
So speaking of morality, General Hayden, this is for you. In the post-truth world, I'm looking for some. I'm an unintended consequence. I just wrote this sitting here right now. So speaking of truth tellers, and I have my golden lasso here, I want to ask about unintended consequences for American citizens at the hands of foreign spies invited to our America. When America invites double agents and their families to our country in exchange for their secrets, thinking specifically in my case of FSB officer Colonel Valerie Mikhailov, what happens when you get unintended consequences? What happens when we invite the family, the son of Colonel Mikhailov, and that son retaliates against American citizens because his father has been left rotting in a Moscow penal colony? Sorry, I'm getting nervous. When his father has been left rotting in a Moscow penal colony, and the Americans don't rescue him for his information, that son sexually assaults and attempts to shoot people. Does our government take any responsibility, or is it only up to local law enforcement? What do we do about this? He's not the only one. I thought we, American citizens here at home, me, who was sexually assaulted, I thought I'm entitled to national security too. Or is it not about the little guy, but only about the big institution that is America?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And perhaps you and I can talk afterwards, but your question exceeds my knowledge in terms of background. And so I just have no data, talked about a fact-based world, and I just have no data on which to respond to your question. When we talk, and if and when I learn more, and we'll see how that works, I'll perhaps return to one of the themes of the art form: nuance, ambiguity, complexity, no easy answers. But again, I appreciate your question. Yeah.
I have a question down here.
And a question
for Claire. I love Carrie's authenticity and her vulnerability. As an actor, is that challenging to play a character like that? The emotional toll in some of the scenes, especially this season with Franny and some of the family issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I love about this role, is that she can be so forceful and strong and self-assured and possessed and total fucking wreck. You know, that she is a raw nerve and she is, you know, she realizes that she's an unreliable narrator, you know, so it's just, that's an amazing opportunity, you know, to play with those contrasts and that juxtaposition. I mean, she's all of those things. And she really cares a lot, and she is an unbridled force, and her relationship is with these ideas and her work. And when, as a woman, do you get to play that? You know, so I just feel so kind of unencumbered by the usual nonsense, and it's been, you know, just an incredible gift. And so I don't know. You know, yes, I'm playing a mom, but you know, she is not your typical mother. But you know, that's been fun to grow with her over time and have that come into the fold of her person, and see what that means to her, and it changes over time and kind of real time. So that's, you know, that again is one of the great virtues of this medium, that it's so long form, and that we are maturing alongside our fictional selves and as a company. You know, it always feels like it's so shameful. It's such a waste when you do a film, which is like relatively no time at all to make. And by the end of it, you think, all right, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing here. But it takes that long to kind of figure out some basic, you know, answer some fundamental questions. And here we've done that. You know, we've played the backstory. We don't have to imagine that. And you know, that all those associations are in our body, and it just it's the scenes become much richer for it. But yeah, I love that she's all those things. Yeah.
And I just have to add, as a director, I get to work with these two actors, and that is one of the most immense gifts I've ever had.
Well, right back at you, but
So,
you know, it's
I mean,
like,
yeah.
you know.
But I mean, it's incredible. And people always ask me all the time, what's Claire Danes like? I mean, is she like that character? And I'm like, absolutely not. She could, but all the time I get this question.
Right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I guess I take that as a
No, it's like she's acting.
Right.
That's not who
But,
she
you know,
is.
you just make me think of something. Sorry to bring it back to the present moment, but the privilege of having 7 years together in the trenches, how we get to learn and know each other in such extraordinary ways. It might be good if someone who is the head of a nation might keep or find a way to keep some of the people around him for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
General
Other
Hayden.
questions? Who's got a
General
microphone?
Hayden.
There you
I have
go,
a question down here.
Go for it.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right.
You're on.
Hi. Yeah, all right, I'm okay. All right. Hi, guys. My name's Theo, and I'm a freshman here and one of your show's biggest fans for all of you. My question is for Mandy. When you were talking about other sides, one of the most horrifying moments of the show for me is in the 4th season when Saul is kidnapped by the Taliban. How did you find a way, because you hear in the discussions, to have another side portrayed in a balanced way when it was terrorism? What was the discussion in the show to make it possible?
Are you asking how to portray the other side's point of view?
Yes.
I became naturally a good friend of Numa Nakar, who played Haqqani, in real life. I did it because I liked him, and I did it to help my job, too. Because as the character, I wanted him to know I was there for him, even though I was his prisoner in pretend world, but in the real world I was there. And the writers did it. I think Alex Carey wrote that episode that you're talking about. And they created this beautiful relationship with these two people that become quite dependent on each other. I'll just share with you a little, how it goes in, where's the TV show, where's the real world? And we were up for some award, an Emmy or a Golden Globe, a company, the whole company. So normally they invite you all to the award ceremony. So I was, I don't know where I was, but I called Newman, he lives in Berlin, and I said, are you going to come to LA for the ceremony? I'm so looking forward to seeing you. I don't know yet, he said. I said, because I would love to show you some of my country. I'd love to show you the West. I'd love to take you around, show you some beautiful country. Oh, I couldn't do that, he said. I said, why? What are you talking about? He said, if I go on a trip here in Europe and go into a bar and get in an argument or a situation, somebody hits me or hurts me physically. If I get into a problem in your country, they'll shoot me and I'll be dead. And I was just stunned by waking up to an outsider's point of view of my country. This gun issue, all that it makes us nuts about, that children killed in a school make no effect. Thank God for Parkland children, not for Parkland, but for the children of Parkland and what they're doing to hopefully shift the ground forever. But because of this accident that I fell into with these people, it changes my life, my relationship with Newman, and it's a gift I never imagined, to have a platform to be a voice for refugees, the most vulnerable in the world, because of a television show. You don't know what life's going to offer you. And the relationship of that adversarial relationship, I knew the minute I read it, I want him to be my best friend. And I thought, what a tragedy that in a television show, this man from where he's from and me are real friends. And in the real world, people are terrified of each other. What's wrong with this picture?
Thank you.
So I'm over here to the right.
Okay, here you go.
So, question for Mandy and Claire. So you both talked about how the roles that you both play and the the members of the intelligence committee that you spoke to had a very earnest and genuine nature, and how they, you weren't expecting that, and how there was a variance between their individual morals, and how they grew up and what they would do to protect the United States from potential danger.
Mm-hmm.
Did this shock you? And do you think that this is something that members of the Intelligence Committee or members of law enforcement or whatever it may be on a national security level, does it shock you that did you not expect them to be this way, and do you think that they have to have that kind of personality to carry on and do what they do? And the second question, very quick, how was the conversation with Snowden? If you can talk about that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it makes sense that they would have that temperament and they would have that level of investment, personal investment, you know. But I just hadn't seen it before, related to it so closely before. I don't know. We're in a we riff on what they do for real. You know, we empathize from a relatively safe space, and it's another thing entirely to be, you know, actually taking those personal risks and wrestling with those choices, and experiencing those personal costs. And I don't know. I think we can draw some parallels between what we do, but you know, we're like in the playground, and I just found it humbling. I mean, yeah, it was just another thing to really to really see it so starkly, I guess. I don't know if you shared that, but
it was very informative and humbling, and a gift of their willingness to share their humanity and their concern for us understanding that that memorial wall at the CIA was a holy place. That Brennan took me into his office and showed me the flag from 9/11. And the big oak circular table had the leather-bound books of all the things the CIA were attending to on a daily basis. And all he wanted to do was inject into me that these are my children, all of these officers, all over the world. And they bleed real blood, and they sacrifice everything for this country and for what they believe in. And he wanted that in me so that it was in my face and in my eyes and in my silence, in my listening. That's all he wanted me to know. And in terms of Snowden, that was an extraordinary spy camp week. We were told this was coming. We were all on pins and needles. We were all, it was the least interesting person that ever came through the door. He, you know, I'm all for the truth. I want the truth out there like nobody's business. The truth to me, if a lie is a cancer to my soul. I want the truth more than anybody in this world. I'm an Olympian in terms of wanting the truth. But that guy was just proselytizing for us over and over again, you know, what he want, you know, his manifesto, as opposed to the film he made, that woman made, where she caught him in a moment where, you know, he was really real. But we kept passing notes to each other under the table, you know, to Claire, to me, you know, get him to talk about something personal. Get him to tell you why he is this way. Get him to tell you why he's so committed.
I don't know. I've played a person with Asperger's. And I don't know. I wondered about that. He seemed a little bit on the spectrum to me. Yeah. No, I'm serious, actually. He really did.
I didn't think you weren't serious.
And that was not clear in the documentary. And who knows? I don't know. But that made more. That kind of made more sense to me. Just observing his affect, and you know. So I don't know. That was my insight. I could be very wrong, but that was yeah. Anyway.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one more, please.
Thank you so much for this fantastic program that really recognizes the symbiotic relationship between Hollywood and Washington. I'm Cynthia Schneider. I teach diplomacy and culture at Georgetown University, where, thank you, Mr. Patinkin, I also co-direct a project that recognizes the power of theater called the Laboratory for Global Performance and Politics. And I'm a longtime friend of Howard's through another NGO in Los Angeles called Most Resource Muslims on Screen and Television. But I have to say, I've been a university professor my whole life, and when people say to me, oh, I don't really watch television, I say, you know, that is really too bad, because with the quality of today's television, that's like saying I don't read books. But I want to ask you a question that builds on the young man's brilliant question, and that is, when you look at the trajectory of bad guys over the time of Homeland, where do you think you got it? Where were you pleased with what you did with that in terms of showing nuance? Where do you think you didn't get it? And how does that land this season?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, look, and Leslie, maybe you want, for my answer, that would be that it's always with the best and thorough and and time permitting intention. So there are actually no regrets. I think some things we got as right as we could, given the resources and as Mandy and everyone here tonight has said, it's really an amazing process of trying to animate even the Snowdens of the world, whose actions are kind of unimaginable sometimes, and even starting with going back to Brody at the very beginning of the show. And I can't, again, Alex and I paced and marched around my block for months, literally, until we found the thing that made him a human being, and that explained to us in very simple, well, not that simple, but human terms anyway, digestible, legible terms, why someone could be turned, whatever turned meant. And then it was, again, Alex Carey and the gift of being in a writer's room with, it's a little bit like herding cats. Writers are by definition very specific, who decides to be a writer, who is the temerity to think, I'll sit down and try to write something down that will get people's attention. So to get 8 or 9 or 7 or 8 people in a room and have this conversation can be great but mostly isn't. But in this case, it's like the Yankees. It's just an amazing. I mean, and Alex Gonza, who's my co-creator, but is the showrunner, is remarkable. I'm a seat filler for him because he is in London watching the European Cup. It's his little reward to himself. Yes.
He was so secretive about that.
So that I can say. I can't talk about Snowden, but I can say Alex is watching Man U. But Cynthia, but to find that this was a character who was sitting in captivity for 8 years. This is going back to Brody, and to find a reason to animate why he might do the things he did. So. I don't know, we do that with every character. Again, nobody wakes up, no bad guy wakes up and says, I'm a bad guy. And knowing that, first of all, it's uninteresting just in pure dramatic terms, and frankly, intellectually and emotionally, it's really a challenge to find some of these people who we look at all too often in very two-dimensional terms, and to animate with some depth why they do what they do, where they've been. Again, look at Yevgeny. Even the small detail that Yevgeny said, my brother died in Yeltsin's hospital. Now, you have to understand that we read articles, Yeltsin's hospitals, if anybody knows, were tuberculosis wards. I mean, they were understaffed. So all these things, it is our distillation of and our processing of history. So.
And jumping into where Howard left off, we get the script as directors and actors and have to find what human qualities these characters possess. And what's so interesting to me, at your house a couple of days ago, Costa, who plays Yevgeny, says, he's really a good guy. He's just misunderstood. No one goes in to play a bad guy. No one feels that way. They have their own issues. And I think as a director, you have to be in the moment and understand that, because they're not going to play the bad guy with the mustache. They're going to play a human being who has had all sorts of things happen to them and therefore are behaving in that way. And somebody who is a terrorist, how horrible is that? But they have a reason for doing it that way, whatever that is, however horrible that may be. But to them, it's not. It's a series of events that occurred in their lives that made them behave that way.
I want to go back to something because it goes back to sort of the theme of the evening, which is about truth, and I guess its corollary is justice in some ways, or that's what's done about truth. And Brody's grievance wasn't that these were Islamic terrorists. His grievance wasn't even that this drone strike took out a school But his grievance was that mistake was never accounted for. It was denied publicly. That's really where, so that's how sort of interesting it is to sort of excavate, dramatically anyway. That's what makes it interesting for us and credible for us, and I'm sure easier and more fun and challenging for all of us.
I just want to digress for 1 second and go back to the Snowden question. Something did happen that week about Snowden, and it had nothing to, it wasn't Snowden. Everyone who came into the room, and each person comes in for 2 to 3 hours, and then we have a 3-hour, we have a lunch with somebody at dinner. It's constant all day long, 10, 12 hours straight. And every individual from the intelligence community that came in, when we asked them about Snowden, and not first question off, but after a good deal of talking, when that question was brought up, their entire nature changed. They couldn't sit down. They changed colors. They couldn't breathe properly. They really had to get themselves together.
That's true.
And that was extraordinary, with no exceptions, for whatever that's worth.
Leslie, you directed the last episode?
I did.
You want to introduce the film clip and then tell us how it turns out?
Oh. Sure.
We'll just reenact it in real time.
Any thoughts before we roll tape?
I assume you're just showing the beginning. I don't actually know what part of the clip you're showing. It looked like it was just the very beginning of the, it doesn't end how people expect. Let me put it that way. How coy is that?
Well, that was a perfect explanation.
Roll video.
They're expecting us at the embassy?
Yeah.
Was that always the plan?
More or less. Difference being we didn't expect to have Yevgeny on our ass.
Well, we don't. Not yet, anyway.
Left here.
Live videos taken on the ground show a violent assault in progress at the headquarters of the GRU, Russia's main intelligence directorate, where personnel are being dragged outside, beaten, and held at gunpoint by members of the SVR, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, a modern successor.
What is this? What's going on?
Apparently the Russians are fighting each other.
Bullshit. It's Saul Berenson, and you sent him there. You thought what? I wouldn't find out? I wouldn't notice? You sent a damn time bomb to Moscow? What is he doing? What's the mission?
He's discussing Russian active measures with members of their intelligence community.
Really? That is discussing active measures? You don't want to answer my questions? Fine, I'll pull him from the field right now.
Don't do that.
Why not? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I?
Simone Martin.
What about her?
I told you she's a Russian operative.
Was a Russian operative.
No. She's alive in Moscow. Saul has gone there to bring her back. Simone is GRU. That's GRU headquarters. So we assumed it was part of Saul's mission, but obviously something has gone wrong.
You think? I should have been briefed on this. You should have briefed me.
I couldn't take that chance.
What chance? That I would compromise an American operation in progress on the ground?
Yes,
Why on earth would I do that?
for the same reason you stuck a knife in my back 2 days ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and join me in thanking cast, writers, directors, producers of Homeland.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really fun.
Thank you. Mandy,
Thank you.
Thank you.